Chambers of Commerce across the UK are working with their members and the wider business community to keep trade moving during the COVID-19 crisis. My name is Paul Britton. I'm Chief Executive for Thames Valley Chamber of Commerce Group, and over the weeks ahead I'm interviewing business leaders across sectors in the Thames Valley region: pharmaceuticals and life sciences, advanced engineering, professional services, and in this session, education. I'm talking to Joanne Harper. Jo is Chief Executive for Activate Learning Education Trust. She's got some 20 years experience in teaching, and we discuss the challenges and the learning that students and staff have had during the COVID-19 crisis. Hello Jo, very good to see you. Good to see you for this one-to-one in 20 interview with Thames Valley Chamber. The education sector, of course, has been in the media quite a bit over recent days, but let's start around the practicalities that you will see. What are the challenges that you will see in terms of keeping that learning environment?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I guess the biggest challenge has been the most obvious one, which is for us to reimagine and refocus what we do as a profession, where we've all been used to centuries now, haven't we, of going into a classroom with a board of some description and the teacher at the front teaching. So a very, very different environment and different challenge. Some huge positives coming out of it. Teachers upskilling and using technology they would never have thought they were going to be able to learn so quickly. Students embracing the new technology and learning new skills themselves. I think the way in which the teachers have shown real resilience to just try anything, see what works and try it, adapt it, change it, get feedback from the students has been really impressive. The students have embraced the technology as you might expect, but have had to really deal with aspects around independent learning where they're not being looked at by a teacher, every minute of the day and kept back on the straight and narrow. So that's been tough for students. I expect fairly tough for parents too. Having to be that teacher's eye to keep them on track and the font of all knowledge in every subject, which I don't envy their job. So a total reimagination of what teaching's about.
No, I agree with your comments about parents and homeschooling. I hear that a lot. I'm with you. I think one of the things that you would expect, as you mentioned, from students and perhaps younger people, is the ability to adapt quickly. And what lessons can we learn from students during the crisis, generally across the business community?
I think they're just, and the same as when they're in school in many respects. Those that are innovative continue to innovate. We've got students who've shown just amazing entrepreneurial skills, providing PPE for frontline staff, engaging in virtual reality engineering lessons, continuing to innovate in a time where we're all trying to kind of backs to our wall, trying to think about what we're going to do from one day to the next. Students never cease to amaze me in their ideas. We're running a radio show that's running a community quiz every Friday to keep people connected. It just goes on, virtual tours going on in buildings that students will be involved in. Their independence, the way some students have really taken on the opportunity to work from home and being independent. And as students of the age group we work at, teenagers, they're not backwards and coming forwards and telling us what they'd quite like us to carry on doing as well, that suits them more.
That was going to be my next question about perhaps how challenged as a sector you think you will be to change now. What lessons are you taking away as a sector, and what are you talking to colleagues about in terms of the advice from that learning as well?
Well, I hope that we are challenged on the back of this to reconsider what education needs to look like. I mean, we talked about what it looked like in the 20th century, the 21st century, and I'm not actually convinced that we've done a lot to change it across any of those centuries. So I hope that we do continue to be challenged and that this isn't forgotten and that we don't just go back to the old normal and we become slaves of the old normal, because I think that would be an opportunity missed. I think we've gone through a ridiculously difficult time for everybody, and if we don't take something positive out of it, we will have really missed a very clear opportunity to make changes. And don't get me wrong, face-to-face, person-to-person contact interaction is still in my books the most valuable part of education. The socialising, the being together in the group, the learning together. I don't think you can replace that with technology. I don't think that's there yet, but I think the mixing of the two could be an absolute kind of eureka moment of being able to take education the next step forward.
And part of that next step, there are high ambitions both for education and for businesses as well around providing experience of work. Perhaps we have had to take a step back now as a result of the social distancing and the other conditions. I mean, what kind of impact are you seeing on young people generally, but particularly around that experience of work?
Yeah, I think that certainly the first thing we had to do was work out how we were going to manage to deliver, normal education and their curriculum. So I think we've pretty much got a solution to that for each of our schools, and most schools across the country now have got something that works for them. But I suppose that we did have to pause on the impact of employers on our students and the support that they give them in terms of their next steps, helping them develop their skills for work. We did have to pause on that while we rethought how we could deliver that. In more recent weeks, we've had that back up and running through the use of video conferencing and technology. And in fact, that's now having a wider reach across all of our schools rather than an employer coming into one building and talking to one group of students. It now actually is available to a much wider group of students. So there's some definite learning to be taken there about maybe a mix of face-to-face and the use of IT facilities to widen the outreach across our trust and maybe more widely than that.
When you look at more widely than that as well, not necessarily around digital, we talk about perhaps the changing challenge of leadership during this time as well, and I've heard that a lot through every sector, and perhaps the leadership of schools and education is being tested more than ever, and there's no perhaps about it. It is, particularly when you see the what's in the media recently, that balance between looking after your staff and getting students back into a safe environment. So show me what challenges you've seen as a leader in terms of that and other things as well.
Yeah, I think certainly from a leadership perspective, of course the outside looking in on education looks as a group of professionals that deliver teaching and learning, but of course as leaders of education, we're also responsible for all the staff well-being, the finance of the school, all of those other things that you do to run a business, and that often isn't considered. So when we're talking about the pressures to get children back into the classroom, and nobody more so than teachers and leaders of schools, heads and principals, no more so do those people think about the children. We think about the children day in, day out. It's the reason why teachers' work-life balance isn't as good as it should be, because they're constantly thinking about what do we do next to improve the chances of our young children, particularly disadvantaged children, because many of us come into the profession to make that difference. It's a vocation for many of us and we want to do that. So we have that as the first thing we think about. But very quickly at the back of that is also we employ staff and we have to adhere to all of the regulations as any other company around making sure that environments are safe. And I think leaders have been challenged in a way that they will never have been challenged in our sector in much the same way as in other sectors. And I think we'll come out of it all the stronger. I think one thing that I've seen which has been really positive is our leadership and our trust is closer now than it's ever been. We're working together to support each other more than I've ever seen before. Head teacher groups are working closer together now to support each other than I've ever seen before. And I think being in it together has been a real strength of the sector. And I would encourage more of that. And I hope that this is a starting point of better use of IT in education. I hope it's a starting point of thinking about what we learn and take forward. And I hope it's a starting point of bigger transparency and better collaboration across the schools and the sector and multi-academy trusts to support each other. Because I think that the way in which we've worked in these last 10 weeks has been very different to anything I've seen in a very long time.
Yeah, from what you're saying, Jo, it's almost like describing this as quite a profound moment for the sector, but perhaps for all leaders as well, in terms of learning the merit. We glibly say about working together and learning together, but I'm seeing that across the chamber network as well. we've never been tighter and closer in terms of the challenges both around interpreting government policy, but representing the views of our members as well, and that has been invaluable, absolutely invaluable. And we've been able to support some of those smaller chambers that have been really challenged, but and learn from the larger chambers or from those that have got new ideas. I think there's more perhaps we can learn other than the digital side around emerging from COVID as well. Perhaps the lessons learned around generally for business from young people, from that adaptability that you've shown as well. What advice are you giving, so that we can tell that? What advice are you giving to colleagues in your sector? What is it that you're trying to encourage more of at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, besides the IT, which is an obvious one, I think it's around working together, as I just mentioned, supportive of each other, being courageous in leadership around what's right for you and your school, your multi-academy trust, your group of schools, whatever that is. Only each individual head teacher or leader knows what their community needs and the makeup of their community. And we have to be brave enough to push back sometimes and say, no, this is right for our community, and this is what we're going to do for our community. We're closest to it. We're talking to the stakeholders, and these are the decisions that we're going to make. And I think if anything's come out of this, that's one of those real kind of leadership moments where I think we need to remember that. It needs to be a point in time where, when we have difficult decisions in the future, we say, remember when we just stopped, took stock and did what was right for us, and ignored the pressures of the squabble that's been going on over the weekend between politicians and trade unions. That will go on, and some guidance will come out of it and something will happen. But in the meantime, we've all got to make decisions for our communities, and we can't wait for that to stop. We've just got to be courageous, supportive of each other, know who we can talk to for that support, and be human beings. I think one of the things that's come out of this crisis, certainly for me, and I've seen it for other leaders, is our staff see us now as more like human beings and not this leader upon a pedestal, because we're going into each other's homes via video conference, and suddenly they're seeing a more human and dare I say, a bit more vulnerable side of each of us. And I think that makes you a stronger leader, being courageous but also being vulnerable. I think it makes you stronger. And I would urge all leaders to really think about their vulnerability and being courageous for their own area and community.
It's certainly a period of reflection for the wider membership and the wider chamber business community. We would usually be getting together around this time to look at what the next iteration of the Business Manifesto would look like, and skills development and learning would always be a key part of that. COVID-19 clearly is going to shape a lot of the way that we lobby and we put our resource out there on behalf of our members. The contribution that you've given on behalf of the education sector has been fantastic, and I think we should just take some encouragement that while the media spotlight has been perhaps upon the restart, I'm confident, and I know you've got hopes around this, I'm confident that we will have a longer memory about this. We will start to recognise the role that essential workers and perhaps the wider business community that aren't necessarily considered in keeping business moving. I think just this crisis has put that in the spotlight, and let's work together to see if we can make that prevail as well, and we can learn from it, I'm sure.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So any final comments on lessons learned for business, Joanne, just to tie up?
I guess it's perhaps not a lessons learned, but a kind of a future, looking to the future. And I expect that because the public purse, the public sector is going to bear the brunt of quite a lot of the no doubt austerity measures that will be coming in the future. And I think it would be a good message for us to think about that and keep a memory of what really supported us on that key work as public sector through this. And for I know companies and industries have been hit, and in 2-3 years' time, people will hopefully be on a stronger footing. And let's just remember that we all help each other out in tough times. And I think the public sector is going to go through many years of tough times. And I think they'll be looking to our industry partners to support in that skills agenda and setting role models for our students. And I would just, encourage our members to really engage with education when they're back on an even keel themselves.
I agree. That's an early call to action, but as we start to restart and renew and rebuild, I think it's one that we'll certainly be supporting you on in the days and weeks ahead. So keep up the good work, Joe. Thank you very much. Always an incredibly active member of the Chamber, and we really welcome it. So good luck to you and your colleagues. Thank you very much.
Thank you.